To be honest, my mother-in-law's outfit that evening was the problem. She was wearing a dress that revealed more of her figure than usual. Every time I went to Aunt from the kitchen, every time she sat on the sofa, I couldn't help but look at her. I knew this wasn't right. I went into my room, locked the door, and sat down. I had no choice but to take some time to figure things out on my own. At first, I tried to think of other women, actresses I'd seen before, strangers I'd met on the street. But it was no use. My mother-in-law kept coming back to me. No, this shouldn't be happening. I tried to force myself to think of something else. But in the end, I couldn't help thinking about her. You can't help it. It was at that moment my breathing quickened. The door creaked open. I was sure I'd locked it. I had ironed my shirt for tomorrow. And my mother-in-law came into the room holding it. And she saw everything. As I sat in the chair, the position of my hands, my expression, it was the moment a major accident occurred. I'm sorry. My mother-in-law hurriedly placed the shirt on the bed. I'll talk to you later. She paused at the door. Without turning round, she said in a trembling voice, "It's okay. A man can do that." But I didn't know. Before I began, I thought this accident would completely change our relationship. Before I began, please support me by subscribing and liking. Now, let me tell you the story in earnest. My name is Kang Minjun. I'm 42 this year. It might sound grand to say I'm a successful construction businessman, but I came from the countryside with nothing and built a mid-sized construction company over 20 years. I lived in a spacious penthouse in Gangnam and lived a comfortable life financially. But a year ago, I lost my wife, June, who was my life's everything, in a car accident. June was 10 years younger than me. She passed away at the age of 32. People around me were worried from the beginning. They said a 10-year age gap was too much. They told me I might regret it later. But my wife was my first and last love. That bright and warm personality was a light in my rough life. After that light faded, I completely fell apart. I was obsessed with work. But every time I returned home, a feeling of emptiness washed over me. I opened the refrigerator and it was empty. The living room was too quiet, and the bed was too big. Was this how I was supposed to live? I fell asleep every night with those thoughts. After the funeral, my mother-in-law often visited. "You're taking a long break, so get some rest." She must have been deeply saddened by the loss of my only daughter, Ji-Yoon. But she couldn't just leave me wandering, unable to eat or sleep properly. "Minjun, please eat and go." The words she said when she first came to visit still linger in my mind. I couldn't answer, just nodded. My mother-in-law opened the refrigerator silently and sighed. What am I going to do if I continue like this? How worried must our Ji-Yoon be in heaven? From that day on, my mother-in-law came once a week. She prepared side dishes, did the laundry, and cleaned the house. Sometimes she would just sit on the living room sofa and spend time with me in silence. We were the only ones who understood each other's loss, and sharing our grief was a comfort. My mother-in-law was also alone. My father-in-law had passed away 5 years ago. Those who live must live. One evening, as we ate together, she smiled sadly, and I felt a strange emotion. There was only a 13-year age difference between us. I called her mother-in-law, but in reality, She was closer to my age. She had given birth to a daughter in her early 20s and still maintained a youthful, elegant appearance, perhaps because she practiced yoga and walked regularly. She looked so healthy and vibrant that it was hard to believe she was only 50. A few months passed at first. Even eating was difficult, but I began to eat little by little the meals she prepared. As I forced myself to go to work, come home, and have dinner with her, the sadness in my heart gradually subsided. It hadn't completely disappeared, but it wasn't as suffocating as before. One evening, after dinner, as my mother-in-law was doing the dishes, I first began to see her differently. She usually came home in casual attire, but that day she was wearing a skirt that went above her knees. I noticed her standing at the sink, washing dishes, and I found myself staring at her unconsciously. No, I shouldn't be doing this. I quickly looked away, but my heart was beating strangely fast. From then on, I began to feel a strange sense of tension whenever my mother-in-law came. A few weeks passed, and then she started to come less often. The weekly visit to see Aniobion was now reduced to once a week, then once every 2 weeks. She hasn't been coming lately, I muttered, staring at the empty refrigerator. I miss the side dishes she used to make, the conversations we shared over meals. More than anything, I missed her. I hesitated to pick up the phone, but then let it slide. My mother-in-law has her own life, too. She can't always focus on me, but a part of me felt empty. When I came home from work, I opened the front door, hoping to see her, but the house was always empty. A month had passed. It was a Saturday afternoon. My phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. The apartment she lived in was facing redevelopment issues. The compensation money was paid, but she had nowhere to go for the time being until she found a new place. When my mother-in-law sighed and said this, I offered without hesitation, "Mom, come to my house. We have a spare room, so it's better than being alone." To be honest, I felt so lonely living alone. I had 4 rooms in a spacious penthouse, but it felt so empty because I was the only one there. I thought having my mother-in-law around would fill the void my wife left behind. My mother-in-law thought about it for a long time. Would that be okay? Wouldn't it be uncomfortable? Not at all. I thought I'd be more comfortable. Ultimately, she accepted my offer. She chose the guest room furthest from mine, and we decided to maintain a reasonable distance from each other. We do our own things during the day and eat together in the evening. For the first few days, it was just that. We respected each other's rhythms and got along without any problems. But once we started living together, a strange change began. My mother-in-law naturally took charge of the housework. "If you have any laundry saved, give it to me. I'll do it together." "Oh, it's okay. I'll do it. It's okay. I do my laundry anyway, so it's easier if we do it together." So I ended up having my laundry done, and a few days later, a clean, folded load of laundry was waiting at my door. My underwear was among them. Oh, my face flushed. My mother-in-law had washed my underwear too. At dinner, embarrassed, I brought it up. "I'll wash your underwear separately." "Why? It's not dirty, and it's just laundry." My mother-in-law smiled nonchalantly. "We live together, so don't worry about that." After that, she continued to do all my laundry effortlessly. It was awkward at first, but I gradually got used to it. Well, maybe it was just getting used to it. It became so natural for my mother-in-law to touch, wash, and fold my underwear. Was that intimacy blurring the lines without me even realizing it? The bigger problem was what happened next. When I woke up in the morning, my mother-in-law was already in the kitchen preparing breakfast. It was so natural to see her wearing an apron, holding a frying pan, and humming a tune. I often saw her reading books in the living room or watching dramas on the sofa. I especially kept seeing her sitting in the living room drinking tea after her evening walk. My mother-in-law wore comfortable clothes at home, but sometimes she'd wear a dress or skirt that went above her knees. She'd cross her legs absent-mindedly when she sat on the sofa, and every time her slender calves would be revealed, catching my eye. I tried to pull myself together, thinking this shouldn't be happening, but my mother-in-law's healthy, muscular body kept catching my eye. She was so well maintained. It was hard to believe she was only 5 years old. At night, it became increasingly difficult to sleep. After my wife left, my husband, who had been sound asleep, slowly began to wake up, and he was facing my mother-in-law. One day, I noticed my mother-in-law, the shape of her eyes, her lips, her smile. She took after my wife, or more accurately, my wife took after her. My wife was a younger version of my mother-in-law, and she was a more mature version of my wife. The moment I realized this, I became even more confused. Was it because I missed her, or was there no answer? It was about a month after we'd been together. I became increasingly aware of my mother-in-law. When she bent down while cleaning, I'd notice her smooth legs peeking out from under her skirt. When she sat on the sofa, legs neatly folded, her hand absent-mindedly reached out and touched mine, making my heart race. Even at work, I couldn't stop thinking about my mother-in-law. What would she like today? Should I buy her favorite fruit on the way home? It felt strange to see myself working while thinking such things, and I looked forward to returning home. I used to dread an empty house, but now I was excited to return to her home. "Are you home?" I'd open the front door, and she'd greet me with a bright smile. "Dinner is ready. Wash up and come out." Those words were incredibly heartwarming. During meal times, we'd share stories from the day. "I won a contract at work today." "Oh my, you did a great job. Congratulations." My mother-in-law listened to my story with sincerity and was delighted. Every time, I'd find myself looking at her face. Our eyes met. My heart would race. What is this? What is this feeling? I knew. This wasn't just gratitude. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was at home because it was a day off from work, and my mother-in-law was doing yoga in the living room. She was wearing leggings and a cotton t-shirt, and the way she slowly moved her body was so elegant. She was wearing leggings and a cotton t-shirt, and it accentuated her figure even more. I pretended to drink coffee in the kitchen while watching her, every movement bending down, stretching her legs, raising her arms was captured in my eyes. I couldn't believe it was the body of Shinseok. Strong thighs, a slender waist, soft shoulders. My mother-in-law was truly beautiful. At that moment, she turned her head and looked at me. "Why do you need anything?" "Oh no." I just quickly looked away. My mother-in-law smiled. "Can you just get me a cup of coffee? I'm a little thirsty." "Yes, I will." I made coffee and offered it to her. She sat on the yoga mat and took her coffee. And then I noticed the hem of her leggings. Just above her knees. My heart raced again. What am I doing? I returned to my room. But the image of my mother-in-law lingered in my mind. I couldn't sleep that night. Images of her kept coming back to me. Doing yoga, preparing meals, sitting on the sofa with her legs crossed. What am I doing? I buried my face in the pillow. I knew I shouldn't be doing this. But my heart was already spiraling out of control. It had been a month and a half since I'd lived with her. I couldn't deny my feelings any longer. Every time she did chores, every time she laughed, every time I heard her voice, my heart raced, especially when my mother-in-law wore a skirt that went above her knees. I felt embarrassed, not knowing where to look. I started having trouble concentrating at work. Even while I was working on documents, I'd suddenly think of her. And even during meetings, I'd often find myself lost in thought. I'd scold myself, thinking this is going to be a disaster. But it was no use. My mother-in-law seemed to sense something too. She seemed to notice that I was looking at her differently. Sometimes, when our eyes met, she would look away first. She seemed to be trying to keep more distance between us. Even during meals, we couldn't talk as comfortably as before. Awkward silences often fell, and we were cautious, self-conscious of each other. It was a Friday night. I'd had a very stressful day at work. Even when I got home, I felt uneasy. After dinner, I went to my room. I showered and lay down on the bed, but I couldn't sleep. I couldn't stop thinking about my mother-in-law. I remembered the tea ceremony she was wearing that evening. It was a dress that went just above my knees, and I'd always seen it as she walked back and forth to the kitchen to prepare dinner. I sat down on the chair next to the bed. I shouldn't be doing this, but my body was reacting. For the first time since my wife left, I was feeling this way. I got up and went to the door. There was another doorknob. It's locked. I felt relieved and sat back down. I had no choice but to give myself time to figure it out. I closed my eyes, caught my breath, and focused on the sensations I hadn't felt in a long time. At first, I tried to think of other things, the faces of actresses I'd seen before, the unfamiliar women I'd encountered in passing, but it was no use. I kept thinking of my mother-in-law, the way she walked back and forth to the kitchen that evening in that dress, the way she sat on the sofa with her legs crossed, the expression on her face when she smiled. No, this shouldn't be happening. My mind told me that, but my body was honest. The more I thought about my mother-in-law, the more intense my reaction became. I found myself focusing on her. My breathing quickened. That was the moment. Knock, knock. Minju. There was a knock on the door, followed by my mother-in-law's voice. I was startled and froze, but I didn't have time to answer. Knock. I heard the door open. Oh, I locked it, but it wasn't locked properly. I was ironing a shirt for tomorrow, and my mother-in-law came into the room holding it. Then she stopped. She saw me sitting on the chair. Her eyes widened at my appearance, my expression, and the position of my hands. Oh, my mother-in-law let out a small cry of surprise. I'm sorry. I quickly covered my mouth with my knees and turned away. My face burned. My mother-in-law's face also turned bright red. I'm sorry. I knocked, but there was no answer. So The shirt fell from her hand. We stood frozen for a moment, staring at the shirt on the floor. I'm so sorry. I couldn't bear to look at my mother-in-law. She hurriedly handed me a shirt and placed it on the bed. I'll talk to you later. She hurriedly tried to leave the room, but paused at the door. She seemed to be catching her breath. Without looking back, she said in a trembling voice, "It's okay. A man can do that." The door slammed shut. I collapsed to the floor. The shame burned brightly on my face. I couldn't do anything else. I just covered my face with my hands and writhed in shame. How would I face her tomorrow morning? Then a strange thought suddenly occurred to me. When my mother-in-law saw me just before she left, her eyes weren't just shocked. There seemed to be something else mixed in. Could it be? No. I shook my head, but my heart was beating strangely fast. That night, I couldn't sleep a wink. The next morning was incredibly awkward. I woke up later than usual. I was afraid to face my mother-in-law, but I had to. When I went out to the kitchen, my mother-in-law was preparing breakfast. "I'm up, eat breakfast," she said, as casually as usual. I cautiously sat down at the table. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes, you did. I slept well too." We had an awkward morning. The conversation trailed off, and silence fell. I wanted to finish eating quickly and go to work. "Are you coming home early today?" my mother-in-law asked. "I don't know. I have some work to do." "Okay, I'll prepare dinner." I nodded and went to work. Even at work, I couldn't concentrate. Last night kept coming back to me. The moment my mother-in-law entered my room, her expression, the words she said, "What am I thinking about right now?" I shook my head, but part of me longed to see her again. At 6 p.m., I hurried home from work. My heart pounded all the way home. I opened the front door and went inside. "Are you home?" My mother-in-law was sitting on the living room sofa, and like usual, she was in the living room instead of the kitchen. "Yes." "What about dinner?" "Not yet. I waited until you got home." My mother-in-law looked at me. The look in her eyes was different than usual. "Sit down." I sat on the sofa across from her. "Last night, remember?" My mother-in-law was the one who spoke first. I held my breath. "I'm sorry, mother-in-law. It's really okay. It's not your fault." My mother-in-law waved her hand. "It's possible for a man to feel that way when living alone." "I know," but I continued speaking honestly, taking advantage of the situation. I was thinking of my mother-in-law. Her eyes widened. "What?" At first, no. I tried to think of something else. Really, I couldn't raise my head as I continued speaking. But my mother-in-law kept coming to mind. Living together, seeing her every day. At some point, she kept slipping into my mind, and my voice trembled. "I know I shouldn't be doing this. You're my wife's mother, and I'm her son-in-law." But then my mother-in-law quietly asked me, "Living together?" I couldn't suppress my instincts. I confessed honestly. I saw my mother-in-law doing housework, sitting on the sofa, wearing a skirt that went above her knees. Minjin, as a man, I couldn't help it. At first, I felt guilty. I felt sorry to my wife and my mother-in-law, and I covered my face with my hands. But it got worse. Even at work, I couldn't help but think about her, and I couldn't wait to come home. It wasn't just loneliness. My mother-in-law was silent for a while. I thought about it too. She spoke quietly. "I guess it's inevitable that we live together like this. being self-conscious. My heart raced. I know how hard it is for a man to live alone. You must have had to endure it every day. My mother-in-law looked into my eyes and said, "You saw me do that in my room alone yesterday." Her face flushed. "I'm sorry. I should have been more careful. I guess I dressed casually at your house." My mother-in-law was touching her knee with her hand. What I saw last night was honestly shocking. Her voice trembled, but after that, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I'm human too. I couldn't stand it anymore. I held her hand. "Mother-in-law, Minjin." She nodded slowly. "You don't have to hold back today. I feel the same way." I thought my heart would stop. "Mother-in-law, really?" "Yes." She squeezed my hand tightly. "Let's not think about anything today." I carefully got up. My mother-in-law also slowly got up. "Shall we go to the room?" She nodded slightly. We headed to the bedroom in silence. We were so close I could hear her heart beat. "Mother-in-law." "Yes." I looked at her face, a face like my wife's, but with a more mature, deeper beauty. She looked at me too, and our lips touched. Loneliness, longing, all emotions mixed together. That night, we crossed the line. It felt like I was waking up from a sleep I'd been in for over a year. Honestly, my mother-in-law was beyond my wildest dreams. I couldn't believe she was 5. It was a whole other level from the times I'd spent alone in my room, comforting myself. The warmth of a real person, the gentle touch, and the shared feelings my body remembered. I couldn't believe how much I'd missed her. It felt like it had been ages since I'd seen her. Perhaps that's why I yearned for her so much. We couldn't let go of each other until dawn. The next morning, I opened my eyes next to my mother-in-law. The sunlight streamed through the curtains. She was still sleeping. Her face was peaceful. We'd done something wrong, I thought, but I didn't regret it. Instead, my heart felt warm. My mother-in-law opened her eyes too. We stared at each other in silence for a while. Regret filled her heart, and she asked first, "No, you're not. I buried my face in your product, but I'm happy." I hugged her tightly. We were no longer mother-in-law and son-in-law. We were a man and a woman. After that day, our relationship completely changed. We still kept a safe distance during the day, but at night, we saw each other out. Even at work, it was different. Before, I didn't want to go home, but now I wanted to get off work early because my mother-in-law was waiting for me. At 6 p.m., I hurried home. My heart pounded even as I rode the elevator up. When I opened the front door, my mother-in-law was in the kitchen preparing dinner. "Are you home? You're early today." "Yes." I wanted to come quickly. My mother-in-law smiled brightly. "Sakaya, I'll prepare it right away." Our dinners together changed too. They weren't as awkward as before. Our hands naturally closed. Our eyes met, and we smiled. After dinner, we sat on the living room sofa and drank wine. While watching a drama, our physical intimacy naturally began. We held my mother-in-law's hand, leaned on her shoulder, stroked her hair. Everything felt natural. "Mother-in-law, you're happy," I said. We looked at each other and smiled. And then we kissed again. We were together that night too. A few days passed, a week passed, and a month passed. We grew closer. My mother-in-law became a part of my life, and I became a part of hers. On weekends, we'd go grocery shopping, walk to the park, and watch movies together. Outside, we were still mother-in-law and son-in-law. But at home, we were lovers. I love being with you like this. One night, my mother-in-law hugged me and said, "It feels like I'm alive again after a long time." I stroked her hair. "If it weren't for you, I'd still be living alone and lonely." I feel the same way. My mother-in-law buried her face in my chest. "Because of you, I feel like a woman again." We fell asleep, holding each other. 2 months passed. Our relationship deepened. It went beyond a physical relationship, becoming emotionally close. I fell in love with my mother-in-law. At first, it was just a way to relieve loneliness. But now it was true love. Mother-in-law. "Would you like to go on a trip this weekend?" One evening, I suggested. "A trip? Yes, somewhere quiet. Just the two of us." My mother-in-law hesitated for a moment. "Is it okay?" "It's okay. No one will know us." Finally, my mother-in-law nodded. We left for Jeju Island this weekend. We booked a quiet pension. It had an ocean view. "Whoa, it's so beautiful," my mother-in-law exclaimed, looking out the window. "I'm glad you like it." I put my arm around her shoulder. We walked along the beach, holding hands. No one knew us. It was freeing. In the evening, we returned to the pension and cooked together. We made a delicious dinner with the ingredients my mother-in-law had prepared. It's delicious. Yes, that's a relief. My mother-in-law smiled. Night fell. We sat on the terrace and looked out at the ocean. We could hear the sound of the waves. "Can we be this happy?" my mother-in-law muttered. "Yes, we deserve to be happy." I held her hand. She looked at me. "Thank you. I'm even more grateful." We kissed. And then we went into the room. The next morning, I woke up early and received the sea slate. I sat on the beach with my mother-in-law and watched the rising sun. It's so beautiful. Yes, it really is. I looked at my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law was more beautiful than the sunrise. "I love you." I said it for the first time. My mother-in-law's eyes widened, and she burst into tears. We broke each other's hearts on the beach. It was the happiest moment. About a month after returning from Jeju Island, my mother-in-law's cell phone rang one evening. She answered, her expression hardening. Right when, after the call, she looked at me. "Ji-hye is coming back to Korea, Cheo-young?" I was shocked. Park Ji-hye. "So, you were talking about Ji-yoon's older sister, my mother-in-law's eldest daughter." Ji-hye immigrated to the United States 20 years ago, married a businessman, and lived there. Even for Ji-yoon's funeral, she couldn't enter the country because of COVID-19. Suddenly, yeah, she said she was wrapping up her life in the U.S. and returning to Korea permanently. And her voice trembled as she worried about me as I got older. I felt anxious too. If Cheo-young returned, our relationship could be discovered. "When are you coming?" "Next week." So she said she'll live with me for a while. My heart sank. If Cheo-young lives with her mother-in-law, she'll have to leave this house. What should we do? My mother-in-law held my hand tightly. "I think we need to be careful for now." I nodded, but my heart was heavy. Cheo-young's husband said he'd be about a month late due to work. Cheo-young arrived a week later. I met Cheo-young at Incheon Airport. My mother-in-law, Cheo-young's older sister, and I, along with her mother, Ji-hye, looked as confident and sophisticated as ever. Cheo-young was as confident and sophisticated as ever. Although in her mid-30s, she looked much younger than her age. Perhaps because she'd lived in the US for so long. She had a glamorous air about her. It's been a while, Jebu? Yes. That's right. I greeted her awkwardly. Chio Yang looked closely at her mother-in-law. Mom, I'm glad you look happy. Yes. That's right. Yes, you look different. Your skin has improved, and your eyes have brightened. My mother-in-law tried to act like she was still young, but I was nervous. Chio Yang's eyes were sharp. When we left the airport and got into the car, Chio Yang asked, Mom, where do you live now? Oh, I'm temporarily staying with my son Dash in Dash La. Yes. Why? Because of the reconstruction. Chio Yang's gaze sharpened. Then, can I stay there too? The hotel bill was a burden, and both my mother-in-law and I were frozen. But there was no reason to refuse. Okay, it's okay, my mother-in-law replied, unable to agree. From that day on, everything changed. With Chio Yang living with us, we were no longer free. We couldn't spend the night together, and we had to hide even the slightest hint of self-consciousness from each other. I tried to make excuses about work, and my mother-in-law spent time with my sister Dash in Dash La. About a week passed. I couldn't forget being alone with my mother-in-law. Chio Yang was always home, keeping an eye on us. One night, while Chio Yang was watching a drama in the living room, I cautiously knocked on her door. Mother-in-law, don't. Ji-hye might wake up. I heard my mother-in-law's trembling voice through the door. I turned and went back to my room. My heart sank. A week passed. While living with Ji-hye, my mother-in-law and I were as careful as possible. We kept our distance during the day, just like before, and even spent the nights in our own rooms. But habits are a scary thing. One morning, I was getting ready for work, and my tie wasn't tying properly. Minjin, come here. My mother-in-law came over and smoothed my tie. It was such a natural gesture, yet her touch felt so familiar. Her face was so close to mine. Okay, she patted my tie and smiled. At that moment, I was startled and stepped back. Ji-hye was watching us from the living room. Another night, after dinner, my mother-in-law was doing the dishes, and I went to the kitchen to help. As I was handing her the dishes, I grabbed her hand. It was only for a few seconds, but we held each other's hand, staring at each other. Just as I was about to come to my senses and let go, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Chio Yang was coming out of the bathroom. I hurriedly handed her the dishes and left the kitchen. Then one evening, while I was watching TV, my mother-in-law was dozing on the sofa. As her head was about to fall to the side, I instinctively put my arm around her shoulder. She leaned against my shoulder naturally. Oh, it was such a familiar gesture. Ji-hye was drinking water in the kitchen, watching us. I cautiously woke her up. Go to your room and sleep. Yeah, oh, sorry. My mother-in-law hurriedly got up. Then another day, I came home depressed after a difficult day at work. I didn't say a word during dinner. What's wrong? My mother-in-law asked with a worried look. No, it's okay. After dinner, I went to the living room, and my mother-in-law followed me. Ji-hye had gone to the bathroom for a moment. Are you sure you're okay? My mother-in-law gripped my hand tightly. If you're having a hard time, tell me, at least to me. Her warm hand almost made me hug her. But at the sound of the bathroom door opening, we hastily let go. Ji-hye came into the living room. Her gaze was sharp. Those precarious moments continued. A month had passed. One evening, Chio Yang called me. "Brother-in-law, I need to talk to you for a minute." My heart sank. Did she get caught? But Jihye brought up a different topic. "Brother-in-law, we found a place for us." "Yes, a place to live with your mother. We're moving next week." It was unexpected, so sudden. "My husband's coming home soon. We need to get the house in order before then," Jihye said calmly. "My mother needs to live in a proper home now. She can't continue to live with you, brother-in-law." Oh, yes. I had mixed feelings. Did Jihye sense it, or was it really time to move? I wasn't sure. That night, you quietly called me. It was after Jihye had gone into her room. "Minjin, did you hear that?" "Yes, you're moving." My mother-in-law looked out the window. "Yes, I think it's time." My mother-in-law's voice trembled. "I think we should stop now." I expected it, but my heart sank. "Mother-in-law, I don't know if Jihye noticed, but it doesn't matter." Tears welled up in her eyes. "You still have to learn Braille and live a new life. Each doesn't matter." "No, it does matter." My mother-in-law looked at me. "Because of you, I felt alive again. I felt reborn as a woman." "Thank you so much." "Me too. But now I have to let go. For you." I held back my tears. "I'm sorry, mother-in-law." And I was so happy. My mother-in-law squeezed my hand. "You have to be happy." I woke up from my mother-in-law's misfortune. Having met the right person, it was our last hug. A week later, my mother-in-law and Chio Yang found a new apartment. The two of them decided to live together in the spacious apartment Chio Yang had prepared. On the day of the move, I helped them move their belongings. As I loaded my mother-in-law's luggage, I felt a mixture of emotions. This is truly the end. While Chio Yang was away for a moment, I had one last conversation with her. "You have to live well." She held my hand. "You too." "I'm okay," she smiled, but her eyes were moist. "You'll definitely meet a good person and be happy again." "I promise." "Mother-in-law." I nodded. "I promise." When our eyes met one last time, we smiled in silence. I was grateful. I knew each other's feelings without even saying a word. The truck started. I stood there watching until it disappeared. Chio Yang came up to me. "Brother-in-law." "Yes. Now meet a good person and live happily ever after." I bowed my head. "I understand." Chio Yang patted my shoulder. After that day, I was alone again. But this time, it was different. I held warm memories in my heart. The times I spent with my mother-in-law, the moments we comforted and loved each other. Those memories didn't evoke guilt, but rather beautiful memories. A few months later, I met a woman at a company event. She was a warm and bright person of similar age. I approached her cautiously. It was a new beginning. My mother-in-law also texted me occasionally. "Take care." "Yes." "Stay healthy." "Too." Mother-in-law. "Yes, you should be happy." To "Yes, you too." Mother-in-law. We let each other go, but we didn't completely forget each other. Sometimes, when I thought of my mother-in-law, I smiled. "Thank you, mother-in-law." I was grateful too. And so our story quietly ended, without guilt or regret, with only warm memories. Thank you for staying with me until the end of today's long story. If anyone has listened this far, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. It would be a great help if you could leave a line